Hi everyone, it's Niamh here and welcome to my art journaling channel. Today we're going to be creating an awesome personalised gift using a different surface using blank baseball caps. So I found this baseball cap in our local Kmart in Australia. It's $6 because it is a ponytail one. You can get the blank normal ones for $4. I'm sure you can buy similar ones in other countries, but I was just blown away by how cheap they were. So I'm starting off by covering the fabric with clear gel medium or clear gesso. Now the reason I'm doing that is just to sort of seal the surface a little bit and give it enough tooth for the paint that I'm going to put on to sort of get into the surface, but not so it soaks up so much. One of the big things about working on fabrics is that obviously they're very porous and you can use an awful lot of paint. So by having the clear gel medium on first, that sort of helps protect it a little bit. It's not going to soak everything up. I'm also using acrylic paints. So acrylic paints, when they dry, are permanent. They're a type of plastic. So again, it's giving another level of protection to the hat as well. Now you can see I'm being really haphazard with how I'm putting on my paints. I'm actually watering them down a little bit, and you can see I'm sort of getting this almost watercolor effect over the surface of my hat. The paint's going on really, really easily because I've got that level of clear gel medium or clear gesso in the background. If I didn't, you'd sort of notice the pigment soaking straight into the surface of the hat and not moving around as much. So I'm using my Dina Wakley acrylic paints. You can use any acrylic paint. You can also buy fabric medium if you feel more comfortable doing that and mix it in with the paints too. I haven't in this case and it's worked fine, but you do what you're used to. I've used the colours mustard, raspberry, marine, sapphire, tangelo, made them a bit watery and sort of plastered them all over. You'll notice I also stuffed some plastic bags into the hat just to keep the shape on it, and I found that a lot easier when I was painting it, just to get a good idea of what it's looking at and not having to hold it and manoeuvre it around. Also, I found for the next stage that I was going to do, where I was going to stencil over it to give a bit of pattern to it, that having something within the hat helped this a little bit better. Now I'm using quite a big stencil. This is a stencil from Stencil Girl. Great stencil to use, don't get me wrong, but I'm wondering next time I do this I may try with a smaller stencil. Just, you can see I'm having sort of to bend my stencil, so not a big deal really, particularly because I'm not really looking for precise stenciling. You can see it's quite an open random stencil in the first place. That doesn't have to be perfect. If you're trying to match up patterns and something, you'd find it really difficult trying to use that pattern. So you can sort of see I'm bending it around and then just putting on my white gesso over the top. Now my cap is quite damp at the moment because not only did I have my paint on here, but I also made my paint quite wet. So by stenciling over the top of this, you can see that I'm getting quite a light pattern, which I like, and it's also sort of bleeding and blending into the background, which is what I wanted. If I left my cap to dry, you'd get much crisper lines. So just be aware, I am very impatient when I do stuff. Take that into consideration when you're doing it. So if you want really sort of crisp lines, leave it so it's completely dry. So you might paint up, if you're doing it for Christmas gifts for example, you might paint up a whole heap one day and then you might stencil them the next day, then you might collage them the next day. So working in that assembly line might work really well for you. I'm choosing to stencil all over my cap. Again, you don't have to. This is really, you know, basically anything you do on paper you can do on here. So if I wanted to add some detail with paint pens, I could do that as well. So the limit is just your imagination really. So you can see me sort of fighting with the stencil to move it around. It's not quite lining up okay, which works for this stencil because those round bits aren't necessarily all round. So it doesn't matter if they're a little bit wonky on this. It looks very awkward though from this angle, doesn't it? once you've finished sort of stenciling, again, I'm going to give it a little bit of a heat dry, but it's still fairly damp as I'm working. The good thing about working on materials or a canvas like this is that it does take a little while to dry. So you've got that time to blend and so on it if you like. So I decided I wanted to put some collage papers onto this, and I've got these beautiful birds from Natalie May Scrapbooking, and you can see sort of why I chose the colours in the background of my hat based on these birds. Now I'm just using a wet paintbrush to tear out around my images. Usually I would use a pair of scissors, but because these images are quite big and they're going to be going on to something that's not a uniform shape, I wanted to have really soft edges that they blend in a little bit more. So you can see I've put on all my matte gel medium, and I am sort of tearing my image as needed to get it onto my cap. I've put gel medium underneath, and I'm sealing over the top with gel medium as well. So obviously, because I've got those torn sections just to get my birds laying flat on the page, I wanted to fill in some of those gaps. So I've used some of the smaller images on the same sheets and just popping those on in exactly the same way and sort of filling in the gaps as needed. So you can see, you know, on the front of my cap I've got this sort of large splotch of colour, which I really like, but if you didn't want something so plain there, you could add some more collage to that area. So again, going in my gel medium, making sure it's really, really covered. And this is a really important bit when you're doing this, is that obviously it's paper, so you do need to make sure it's well sealed, particularly if you are going to be wearing your cap outside and so on. Now luckily in Australia in summer usually it's fairly sunny and it's not raining, but you know, just be aware that sealing it is a good idea. You could certainly, if you're really concerned about it, I'm sure there's sort of like waterproof sprays and so on you could put over the top as well. I haven't done that with this, so I'm not sure. I'm sure it'll work okay, but I'd certainly do a test patch as well. Same with my paint pans. If I was really particular about this, I would probably put a sealing coat over the top of them. I haven't on mine, because honestly it was that cheap and I had fun doing it. I don't really mind, but no, if you're giving it as a gift to someone, you'd want it to last. So I'm just finding with putting my white paint pan, something I like to do to these images, it just, I don't know, brings a bit of me into them, adds a little bit of colour to them and a little bit of highlight to them as well, and gives them a bit more shape, and helps pull the images out a little from the background as well, which I really like. Because I had that sort of blank space on the cap, I decided I was going to put some text, and I decided I'd be brave and actually write it on. Usually I'd sort of use a collage bit or use my stencils or something, but I decided just to go for it. So the reason the paint pen's not working so successfully down on the bottom is I am still working over very wet surface. Like it's still very damp to the touch. Again, no patience. So I would suggest you leave it to dry, particularly if you're going to be doing extra paint pen and stuff over the top. Because I wanted this to stand out, I've done a thicker black coat underneath, and then I'm putting the white over the top, and I've done a double coat of the white just to make sure it's very opaque, and that gives you almost a really simple shadow around your area, around your lettering, so it stands out. So this is the stenciled part of my hat. You could certainly leave it like that if you wanted to, but then I've gone on to add excuse me, the collaged images. So this is sort of close up, and you can see how that paint pen has added to the image, how it's sort of blended into it. Obviously this hat is still stuffed with bags within it, so it's got a little bit of rigidity. When you take that out, it still stands pretty well. You'll notice in some of these close-ups, some of the collage papers have a little bit of a wrinkle in it. Again, it doesn't really bother me, but certainly if you take a little bit of time when you're putting it down, you can kind of get rid of all the wrinkles as needed. So I hope you have a go at personalising your own baseball caps or hats or whatever you've got. If you can put it on paper, you can put it onto another 3D surface. So I hope this gives you a bit of inspiration for Christmas. Until next time, bye for now.